All right, let's talk about economic growth. And I know what you might be thinking. Dry statistics, boring GDP charts, but forget all that, because economic growth isn't just a number. It is, quite possibly, the single most powerful force that has completely reshaped human life over the last couple of centuries. So yeah, let's dive in. Okay, just take a look at this. Back in the 1600s, an average worker earned just enough to afford about 2,500 calories a day. That's basically survival rations. Now, flash forward to today. A worker in that same part of the world can afford to buy over 2 million calories per day. No, that is not a typo. The change is so massive, it's honestly hard to even wrap your head around. So this gets us to the big mystery. What on earth happened? For thousands of years, the life of an average person pretty much stayed the same. Then, in what is really just a blink of an eye in human history, everything just exploded. So what was the trigger? What lit the fuse? To solve this mystery, we really have to understand this transformation. It's truly a tale of two completely different eras for humanity. One of, well, stagnation, and one of explosive growth. Here's our first big clue. This timeline shows that from the Roman Empire all the way through the Middle Ages, not much really changed for the average person's wallet. It was a long story of just getting by. But then, right around 1800, the Industrial Revolution kicks off, and that flat line suddenly takes a sharp right turn and shoots almost straight up. We went from centuries of just crawling along to a period of absolutely rapid modern growth. So, something about the Industrial Revolution kicked a really powerful engine into high gear. Let's pop the hood and see what that engine actually is. This secret ingredient is a concept called labor productivity. It sounds a little technical, but it's a profound and actually simple idea. It's just the value a person creates in a set amount of time, say 1 hour. The more value you can create in that hour, the more productive you are. And when everyone gets more productive, the whole society gets wealthier. This is the engine of all economic growth. And this is absolutely the crucial point. It's not that people all of a sudden started working 10 times harder. It's that they found ways to work 10 times smarter. The exact same hour of human effort started producing way more value. This chart is a perfect illustration of that engine at work. It shows the output per hour in the United States. I mean, just look at that steady climb. The average American worker today produces more than twice as much in a single hour as a worker did back in the 1970s. That right there, that is the productivity engine in action. So, okay, if productivity is the engine, then what's the fuel? What are the ingredients that actually make us more productive? Well, it turns out there's a pretty clear recipe for it. The recipe for growth has 3 key ingredients. First, you've got physical capital. Think of that as the tools, the machines, the buildings. Second is human capital. That's all of us, our knowledge, our skills, our experience. And third, well, this is the real game changer, technology. Think of it as the secret sauce that makes everything else work better. This shows those ingredients in action. The whole process is called capital deepening. Now, the chart on the left shows that the value of physical capital, so the tools, per worker has tripled since the 1950s. At the very same time, the chart on the right shows human capital deepening, with education levels just steadily climbing. It's pretty simple when you break it down. More tools plus more skills equals more productivity. But technology, that's the wild card. And it's not just about smartphones and AI. In economics, technology just means any new way of doing things. The invention of the assembly line? That was technology. A new piece of software that organizes a warehouse better? That's technology too. It's really the collection of ideas that lets us get more out of the same tools and the same skills. It's the ultimate multiplier. So, we have our recipe for growth. And maybe the most hopeful part of this whole story is that this recipe, it isn't a secret. Anyone can use it. And that has led to a really remarkable global phenomenon. This brings us to a really powerful idea called convergence. The logic is simple. If you're a lower income country starting with less capital, every new investment, every new factory, every new road has a much bigger impact. This allows those economies to grow much faster than already rich countries and start to close the gap. And the data here is, well, it's undeniable. Just look at these average growth rates. Countries like China, India, and Vietnam have been growing at over 6% a year. Now compare that to the average for high-income countries, just 1.7%. They are closing the gap. This is convergence happening right before our very eyes. And if you want a dramatic, real-world example of this, you don't have to look any further than South Korea. In the 1950s, it was one of the poorest countries on the entire planet. But by systematically investing in education, capital, and technology, it transformed itself into a global economic leader in a single generation. It's just an extraordinary testament to the power of this recipe. So, the crucial takeaway here is that these seemingly small percentage differences matter immensely over time. Why? Because of the power of compounding. An economy growing at 5% a year doesn't just add a little bit each year. It grows exponentially. Over 50 years, it'll become almost 7 times larger than an economy growing at just 1%. That's the difference between stagnation and total transformation. But, it's not quite that simple. This process isn't automatic. The recipe for growth is powerful, for sure, but it only really works if you cook it in the right kitchen. Growth needs a healthy environment to flourish. You can think of it like a greenhouse. This includes things like the rule of law, so people know that contracts will be enforced. It needs protection of property rights, so people have an incentive to invest for the long run. And it needs stable institutions and an openness to trade. Without that basic foundation, the recipe's ingredients they don't come together right. So what about the rich countries? Does their growth just have to stop eventually? Well, not necessarily. This graph shows that while just adding more tools and machines leads to diminishing returns, technology is always creating entirely new, more productive growth paths for us to jump on. So as long as we keep innovating, we can keep pushing that ceiling higher. So let's circle all the way back to where we started. This whole journey from stagnation to explosion, it was never just about numbers. It was a fundamental revolution in the human condition. It was the difference between short, difficult lives and longer, healthier ones. The difference between widespread illiteracy and mass education. The difference between just barely surviving on 2,500 calories and the incredible prosperity so many of us know today. The story of economic growth has really been the story of human progress for 2 centuries now. It's lifted billions of people from poverty and reshaped our world. But it also raises new, massive questions about inequality, about sustainability, and about what comes next. The first 200 years were a wild ride. What will the next 200 bring? Well, that's the question we are all a part of answering.